So you want to be a PvP god, huh? Let's get started. What is up, guys? Today we are going over the top 20 things you need to be a PvP god. Now, you may already know some of these. Maybe you know all of these. So leave a comment down below. Let me know how many out of the 20 you guys already know. In the meantime, let's get started. Number 1. Make sure your settings are correct. Now, this is something that I see sometimes, whether it's Guardian Theater or popping into a new Destiny streamer stream. Make sure you go through your settings and put everything but texture to low. I'll put my settings here on the screen. The reasons you should do this is to prevent low frames. From high skill tournament players to your casual trials gods, you're going to want the maximum amount of frames possible for PvP. Now, once you have all that switched, make sure at the very bottom, and this one is so important, is to have motion blur off. I cannot tell you guys how many times I've seen someone do a quick turn and everything just kind of blends in. Now, just a quick tip, guys, also be sure on your monitor in the NVIDIA control settings that your monitor is actually outputting the maximum amount of hertz that it can. Once these are all set, we can move on to number 2. Practice and know your character's movements. Now, we're lucky enough to have 3 guardians to choose from. Good old Titan, a warlock, or a hunter. Each with its own unique movements and skills. Titans don't have the fastest movement, but they can play around barricades often, which does help their lack of speed. Warlocks on certain subclasses can move fast, especially once you master Top Tree Dawn. Hunters with stompies can also jump very high, and hitting your head on things actually boosts you forward. Take whatever subclass you love to use and try to master their movement. Go into private matches and try moving around the map as quickly as possible. See what's possible and you'll be surprised at what can be accomplished. Be sure to try new things as well. Get out of your comfort zone when it comes to movement. Really master this and a lot of things will come a lot easier to you. Number 3. Warm up before you get into any PvP games. For me, right when I log in, I know I'm heading into trials to do some trials help or just game with friends. I tend to head to the Cosmodrome. I load in with the loadout I usually use and start shooting dregs. After about 5 minutes, I'll start to add some movement and I'll try to make it harder on myself to hit their heads by jumping around and dashing while I shoot. You will notice a difference between this and going into PvP cold. You could also use things like aim labs and Kovacs, but to be honest, guys, nothing really beats being in the game, shooting the weapons that you will be using. On to number 4. This is something that personally helped me a lot, and that is find streamers that are good and watch how they play. This is something I personally did when I first started playing Destiny on PC. I found a few bigger streamers that had very high KDs that did double carries in trials as well. Now, guys, please don't get confused on an off note. A high KD doesn't always necessarily mean a good player, but sometimes when you find a bigger streamer who is doing double carries, you can also learn a lot. I looked at how they positioned themselves and what battles they decided to take or run away from. It will take time to get your game sense to that level, but seeing someone else and figuring out why they made those fast in-game decisions has not only helped me, but I believe they can help you as well. I cannot tell you the amount of angles that I have learned just by watching other streamers. I found some nasty angles on Dead Cliffs, and especially on Jav 4, that I can show you in other videos. Now, it doesn't have to be a lot of streamers. Pick 1 or 2 good large streamers and focus in on a few games from time to time. Number 5. Mods and stat builds on point. Before we actually head into PvP, let's make sure you got the right mods and stats for your armor. I'll use my Warlock as an example. I personally recommend that you have at least 2 stats to shoot for 100 overall. For myself, I have 100 recovery. This is so that when I get shot, my time to regen health is at its fastest that it possibly can be. The second 100 that I focus is going to be my intellect. This will allow me to get my super as fast as possible when I'm in a game. Now, these stat builds aren't the same for every class. For hunters, I recommend 100 mobility as a priority and 100 recovery. Everything else, try to aim towards intellect. For the actual mods that I have on my armor, let's go piece by piece. On my helmet, I do rock a hand cannon targeting mod. It does improve target acquisition when using my hand cannon. This does help. For my gauntlets, I do have hand cannon loader. This does increase the reload speed as well as fastball, which does allow me to throw my grenade just a little bit farther. Moving on to the chest, I do have shotgun unflinching as well as hand cannon unflinching. I'm going to be honest, these don't really feel like they help too much, but they're there anyway. On my legs, I do have insulation. This does reduce the class ability when I pick up an orb. And then I really do like to rock high energy fire. While charged with light, you gain a bonus to weapon damage, and then each defeated combatant consumes 1 stack of charged with light. So generally when someone pops around me, I do get charged with light. It does add a little bit of damage when I'm running around and shooting. And then to finish it off, guys, this is actually one of my favorite mods. It's a little sneak peek before I do a full video on this. On my bond, I do have outreach, which does reduce my melee cooldown when using my class ability. But the creme of cremes, I do use Pyretic Embrace. Now, when I cast my Top Tree Dawn, which is a solar super, it fully restores me to full health and shields. We're going to go over why this is so good in a point a little down the line, but these are the mods that I do rock on my Warlock. Guys, please make sure that your mods are on point. Mess around with this and make sure to keep an eye on vendors, as they can sell some pretty nice rolls that will come and go absolutely unnoticed. Moving on to number 6. Pay close attention to your radar. Now that we've gotten all the stuff in the beginning done, let's get actually into the game with some things that might help you. I have played so many games where I'm able to get around the enemy team for a nice flank because no one's really paying attention to their radar. When I'm running around a map, you'll see me looking at the radar 70% of the time, as I don't really need to be directly looking at the map to know where I'm going. Once you start to know the maps well enough, you can move around more freely without having to stare exactly where you want to go, which does allow you to see where your enemy locations are and how to play from there. Something very important about radars is how exactly to read it. Now, if it looks like this, that means that the enemy is right next to you, probably about body to body to 5 meters in distance away. Now, if it looks like this, it means that they're going to be between 5 meters and 25 meters away. Now, if it looks like this, they're going to be about 25 meters and onwards, meaning they're not too close, but you're going to see exactly where they're heading on the map. A few things that are less obvious are when this comes up. This means that they're on a level above you. It's a little harder to see, I know, but it might take some time to get used to. It's hard to notice at first and may never be needed, as you could just be using the sound cues of them jumping, but I wanted to throw this out there to let you know that there is a difference. And a bonus for those going against those pesky top trees, if you ever see this, well, just know that Warlock just consumed his grenade and is floating trying to get a snipe on you. This one is very important for those bigger maps like Widow's Court, where you might find a Warlock floating up in the air. Moving on to number 7, always know where your teammates are. Now, one of the most important things is team chemistry. If you can find yourself a team that you enjoy playing with, you will naturally start to understand what they do, and each will develop a playstyle around this. If you don't have a team to play with, understand that each player will be doing something completely different. They may not stick together. They may just sit back, or they might be kamikazing themselves directly into the enemy. Either way, you need to always have in the back of your mind exactly where your team is and how that affects the enemy team with where they may place themselves or go to. To practice this, head into an elim or even a comp match, as it'll give you many opportunities. Now, in the middle of the match, just consciously check where they are, where your teammate is or teammates, and where they are on the map. Are you in a position to help them if they get flanked or shot at? Just something to always keep in mind, and remember to work together. This will help you tremendously when you head into the battlefield. Moving on to number 8. Grow confidence and try new things. Now, something I see new and novice players alike is the fear to try and experiment with new things. Try new things and don't fret when they don't work out in the first 5 times. Practice what you see that works for other players. There is no reason that what works for one person won't work for you. That one crazy player that just ran in and got the 3-piece, well, there were probably a lot of times that he tried that and ultimately got absolutely dookied on. Now, for the guy that we just used in that example, well, like we just said, that didn't work every time. Build the confidence you need to succeed. Without confidence, you're going to end up playing scared, which will let you end up as an unfortunate floating ghost. Make the moves you need to take. When an enemy is low, Have the bravado to go in and try to finish that guardian off. It may not work every single time, but you're going to be surprised how often it does. Moving on to number 9. Practice using your primary more than your secondary. A really important aspect of this game is team shooting, and well, if you have your sniper out 90% of the game waiting for someone to peek a lane, while 2 of your teammates are in the battle of their lives, you may end up the last guardian standing and looking like a silly goose. Having your primary out 90% of the time is essential, as it keeps you ready and available to shoot with your teammates, ultimately resulting in more success than failures. Now, I'm not saying never use that sweet shotgun that you may have just gotten or that perfect 5 out of 5 god roll ISO, but start being more conscious of when you have it out and when it's just not the right time. Again, don't worry if you don't get this right away. Everything takes practice, and you're doing great. Number 10. Use surrounding objects to your advantage. This is one of my favorite things to do when I get in sticky situations, and it's the use of my environment, specifically boxes. I main my good old Dire Promise and other hand cannons, so it makes it a bit easier than, let's say, an auto rifle or pulse rifle. So find yourself getting shot at behind a box, and you keep peeking out left side and then right side, and at a point, you're in a 50-50 situation as they may already be aiming in that spot. This is where my glorious calf workouts come into play. I jump over the box, pre-aim to where I think he may be, and try to pop 2 shots off before I fall behind that box again. At this point, your enemy's not going to be sure where you're going to come out of, which is going to give you so much of an advantage that it'll help you secure the kill and move on to the next target. This can work with other objects as well. Try to load into maps and private games and find those cheeky angles. Try to find things that might give you an advantage or two that other players may not be looking out for. Now, if you guys want, comment down below. I can make a video on all the cheeky angles and spots that I know of that I personally use so that you guys can also use them as well. But you gotta promise that you're never gonna use it on me if you see me on the other team in Crucible. Alright, number 11. Baiting your enemy. Baiting your enemy is one of the sweetest things you can do. To make the enemy think you're going one way or someplace, and then you go a completely different direction just to shoot them on the sides of their head. Dang! I love it! I'll go over 2 quick ways you can do this. In the first example, what I love to do is peek out at the bottom, get a few shots off. They're gonna think I'm in a tight situation. Then what I do is I do eat a grenade, I try to float up, I wait a few seconds, and then I'll peek out and try to shoot them on the top of the head. A secondary way I personally love is to bait in a 1v1 or 1v3 situation. Whenever I have a super and I'm hurt, I bait my enemies towards a nice little open area as I sit helpless behind a small little tiny cover. Now remember that one mod I was talking about? Yeah, the Pyretic Embrace. So this is when I pop my super, get my health back fully. Now what I imagine goes on in the enemy VC is that they call out to move in even faster as they last saw I was one shot. Then boom! Easy cleanups. Now before we go to 12, we will be going over mods in another video, but this was just an example on how to bait your enemies to their very timely deaths. Number 12. Always move with purpose, guys. When a round starts, you should have an exact idea of where you're going, where you want to engage your enemies, and further down the round, if a super pops, have an escape route to go to so you're not thinking of something in a panic. Try to always be a few steps ahead, much like a chess game, and be prepared. I see teams going into rounds willy-nilly, not sure where they're heading, what they plan to do, and what are they going to do when they turn that corner and they see 2 enemies just staring at them. On certain maps, I like to head into certain spots, scope in for no more than 3 seconds, and then move forward to the next cover if I don't see anyone peeking. From there, read your radar, see where your teammates are, and make decisions at that point. One last important thing, have a plan when your teammates die, guys. I see this happen in trials a lot. If you go against a team that you're confident you can 1v3, then take your time and pick them off one at a time. But if it's a solid team and you have your doubts, well, jump. I know, listen, I said jump. The reason is the longer you wait, the more super energy they're getting versus you and your dead teammates. It's a 1v3 super energy battle. Just some extra advice that can help in those competitive matches. Number 13, record your gameplay. This might be one of the most important ones to help you see exactly what you might be lacking in. If you don't know how to record, simply download OBS and set your record settings under the settings tab. Play around 2 Rumble games as well as 3 Elam matches and go over that footage. See exactly what got you killed from a second perspective. Did you peek out too long? Did you push up too far and forget where your teammates are? These things will help you work on the exact thing you may need help with, which will ultimately make you a better player. During this time, you can actually experiment with different playstyles and different weapons to see what works and doesn't work. This is a hidden gem, guys. Let me know down below at any point in time if this helps you, as it helped me tremendously. Number 14. For the love of God, don't jump. Now, we've all been in the situation where we get excited at the beginning of the round and do a really big jump to try to get where you want to get as fast as possible. Sometimes at the peak of your jump, casually look over and you see something that makes your eyes open as wide as possible. The dreaded 3 red eyes looking at you from the back of the map. I don't want to lie to you, as there's only one thing you can do which could possibly save you. Spin your body and look down and pray they hit your back and not that sweet, sweet thing between your shoulders. That's right. It's turning around and showing your back to the sniper and looking straight down can actually hide your head. Keep in mind, guys, that jumping too high at any point is a commitment. Jumping high if you're confident that you can hit shots is great, but jump too high and not knowing what's on the other side of that wall can get you sent to the grave. This same tactic can also work when sliding. When you're sliding around a corner and you see someone already pre-aiming with a sniper, feel free to look down and turn your head the completely other direction. Might look a little weird, might feel a little weird, but it's gonna allow that sniper to miss your head and hit probably the top of your back, bottom of your neck, the neck. I'm not too sure, just not the hitbox, that's the back of your dome. It's a small chance of survival if they hit where your head should be, but might save you a few lives in the future. Number 15. Spend less time ADSing when you aren't in a gunfight. It may be obvious, but when you ADS with most weapons, it's going to hide your radar. When over-aiming down sights for too long, or maybe to get ready for an enemy to run out of a door or come up behind you, you lose the ability to read where the rest of the team is. In the middle of a gunfight, this isn't an issue, but when you're sitting around and waiting for something to happen, this could be the deciding factor whether you get flanked or shot in the back by some guardian who just bot-walked up behind you. It's better to be hyper-aware and only aim when needed to help keep those eyes constantly at the radar. Now, if you're having a problem with this, you can use guns such as Ace of Spades. Those have the ability to aim down sights and not lose the ability of your radar. If you don't want to use things like Ace of Spades and you happen to be on Hunter, you can also use Knucklehead Radar, which also allows you to use your radar when aiming down sights, no matter what weapon you're using. Just throwing that out there, guys. If it's a hard time at first, Ace of Spades, Knucklehead Radar, you guys are doing great. On to number 16. Practice peak shooting. Peak shooting is one of the greatest benefits of using a hand cannon. You may be sitting there watching this video thinking, Matty, I don't even use a hand cannon. Well, here's my advice right now. Go look in your vaults, find a good 140 to use. If you don't have one, feel free to grab Ballyhoo out of collections. We may or may not have already done a video on this. I'll put the link down in the description. And practice the art of peak shooting. This allows you to hide your body behind cover and pop out just enough and for enough time to shoot one shot at the enemy before tucking back in. Every single player at the top of the PvP food chain has mastered this skill, and for good reason. From the enemy's perspective, they have a very limited opportunity to shoot back at you in that split-second time that you peeked out. And if they happen to hurt you enough, you can pull back further into safety of the wall that you were just using. This is a very important skill to learn, so please take your time with this. We can actually make an entire video on peak shooting, as well as our next tip. Number 17. Learn the ADS slide. Now, after we've mastered and understood the benefits of peak shooting, let's talk about ADS sliding. This will help you in countless engagements. Let me explain. When you get in a gunfight or you're heading into one, you have 3 options. You can bot walk around the corner to try to engage an enemy, which will ultimately get you killed. You can jump the gap and shoot to avoid getting killed as easily, but this is more of a point A to a point B situation instead of engaging. or the third option of sliding out while aiming down sights to move and possibly get a kill or two. This is extremely effective in most situations, as you never want to just walk around a corner to a possibly scoped enemy. You're gonna want to start before the corner and want to peek by running, hitting the slide button, quickly looking to the side you want to peek, and ADS at the same time. Listen, I know it sounds complicated, it's going to take a little bit of practice, but I promise you it's not as hard as it sounds. This will allow you to not only be able to shoot back, but possibly get a kill and allow you to stay low, fast, and move all at the same time. Keep in mind that practicing your reticle placement is very important as well and will take practice, but once mastered, will come unconsciously. On the flip side, before we move on to the next tip, if you are aimed in at the corner, it does help not to aim at head level near that corner, but instead to aim farther away and lower to prepare for their ADS slide from the enemy. Just food for thought. Number 18, learn how to play your super. Now, each super has different play styles, with pros and cons attached. Roaming supers have the added benefit of chasing you down and making you feel that sweet, sweet sensation of death, sometimes a few steps behind you. Some other supers are a one-time use with devastating effects if used right. Whichever you do pick, start to understand in what circumstances it does best in. If you're a Nova Bomb, you're going to want to wait for your enemies to be fairly close. Spectral Blades? Well, you can chase down those Guardians pretty quick, but make sure they appear close enough on your radar so that you can do it fast and without any loose ends. Something to keep in mind, which sometimes gets me, is where to pop. Some Guardians love to run out in a big dramatic way and pop out in the open, which eventually gets them sniped out. Always try to pop behind cover where you're safe and then make your big entrance. Just a tip to not completely get shut down before you have any fun with that super. Moving on to number 19, decide as a team. On the subject of supers, decide as a team when you see the enemy's supers up and ready to go, whether you want to team shoot it or run away to a certain area of the map. There's nothing more frustrating than seeing a super pop, you get some really great shots leaving the super one, and your teammates nowhere to be found. You have to talk this over, as this has split many teams up and left them to my cold hard Dawnblades. On the same note, if two or more teammates have supers that can counter another player's supers, make a decision who will be the one to pop and try to shut it down. There is nothing more gut-wrenchingly painful than when a double or even a triple popping happens to try to take out one Spectral Blades when it could have just been a good trade out of supers. This right here can decide whether you win or lose a 4v4 trials match. Number 20. Now, last but very much not least, the game mode to get better in. Now, when trying to figure out where to go to sharpen your skills before a fun, cheater-free weekend of trials, thank you Bungie and BattleEye, you're going to want to head into Rumble. This game mode allows you to practice a 1v1 at all times, which will work on your alertness, your speed, decision-making, and overall gun skill when dealing with multiple enemies at once. Rumble will really make you practice reading your radar, reminding you not to ADS for more than 3 seconds, and make you develop some quick decision-making skills when you end up getting pinched with the guy in front of you and the guy that just so happens to spawn right behind you. So take your time, guys. Listen, these tips aren't the easiest. You can't be good overnight, but with these tips, working on them, looking at your recorded gameplay, finding the things that you're not as great in and sharpening them to make you an absolute beast, I promise you that you're going to improve. I truly hope this helped, guys. I'll be making individual videos on some of these. You guys can comment down below what you want to see, but please let me know also how many of these you knew and if you guys really did enjoy this. Again, guys, thank you so much. We are sponsored by Advanced GG. Using code Matty does get you 10% off, and it helps me out tremendously. Guys, thank you so much. I love you, and I'll see you guys on the next one.